Welcome to the Mainly Stories podcast. Today, I've got one of my best friends in the whole wide world, a guy that worked his way up from nightclub photographer, surf photographer, bass guitar player and doubles tennis phenom to running one of Melbourne's most successful content creation and social media marketing agencies that's done worldwide brands in the spaces of food and beverage, fashion, direct-to-consumer goods, and just about everything else. So, Ben Jones, welcome to the podcast.
It's a very lovely introduction.
Good to have you here, brother.
And it's a bit of a worry that our conversation is recorded in such high definition and to be distributed.
Yeah, exactly, mate. There's
widely.
no hiding from the three cameras that we have and two microphones.
No.
But, yeah, mate. No, thanks for coming on.
No, thank you very much. I'm honoured to be the first guest.
First
of many, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So, yeah, just sort of the whole basis of this podcast, I guess, is talking to people who have forged a career in things they want to do, right? Like they've come from, their school and then uni, but they've sort of done a different way or found a way to do the things that they really like. So, I've known you for most of my life, I guess.
Yeah.
And you started off nightclub photography, I think, and surf photography.
Yeah. So the photography was always just a hobby, really.
Yeah.
I got into nightclubs in a bit of a funny way, because I was always shooting friends down the beach. I think it was a really good way for me to learn the basics of photography.
Yeah. Well, I remember every summer we'd be like, oh, Ben, are you coming to shoot this? And like our summer videos and stuff when we were 16, 17.
And I feel like it was such a good way for me to start because, luckily we were blessed with, very open and good looking friends who were happy to, jump off rocks.
I mean, look, you're making me blush, mate. Look, it's really tough being ridiculously good looking. Yeah, exactly right.
Well, it's nice that in an audio medium that we're still recording it visually as well,
exactly.
So people can see the good looks as well.
Absolutely.
But no, I remember my journey into the nightclubs came from a friend who I went to school with who had said, we're starting up this new night. And he was like, do you have a portfolio to share with them?
Is that Uptown?
No, that was Animal House.
Animal House at Ords.
In Hawthorne.
Yeah.
And he was like, do you have a portfolio to share? I was like, yeah. And, I thought I had some pretty good shots. And
yeah.
Naturally, they weren't exactly like nightclub. It wasn't the best show reel for
club photography,
sort of stuff. So I remember my portfolio got sent to one of the people running the night, Tash, who I work quite closely with at the moment as well, and it was just wave photos. And I remember she called me and she was just like, can you shoot people? Like,
is there a person
all
that
I can
shot?
see here is just ocean photos.
Yeah.
And I remember I used to shoot everything on a fisheye because that was that's
the big blue housing that we used to car around everywhere. Yeah.
So I got started into nightclubs, and then from there a little bit into a bit of music festivals as well over the years.
Yeah, so that's stuff like BTV.
Yeah, Beyond the Valley.
Did you do Falls ever?
No, I never shot Falls, but mainly worked with Untitled Group.
Okay.
I think this was my 5th Beyond the Valley that I just came off just recently. A week ago.
How was?
It was great fun.
Good fun?
It was great fun. It's made me realise that perhaps I'm getting to the end of that era.
I think we both realised that at pitch when we were cleaning the dirt off with wipes on the last day, and we're like, yeah, a shower and air conditioning might be.
I think
nice.
I think those days are behind me. But I'm so thankful for that opportunity because through the music industry, I got to meet so many fantastic people.
Absolutely.
Who were also very young and doing things as well. I think it was a nice environment for me to be 18 and shooting at festival.
Yeah.
To be around people who were doing things.
Well, I think that's the difference, isn't it? Like being that young and getting exposed to that industry. From taking photos of waves to working in a nightclub. Now you're taking photos at what is the biggest festival in the Southern Hemisphere. I'm fairly certain at this point. Must have been a bit of a trip. I mean, we've both, you've taken me places and it's been like, fuck, you're backstage with some of the biggest music artists and they were just hanging out sort of thing.
100%. I think it was a good early lesson to me to be like, you can kind of do this stuff. It's a lot of my kind of career, I guess, you could say to this point has been, very much faking it till you make it.
Yeah.
Just being like, we are bigger than, even when, we started Northbrook, or even prior to that, I was very set on, you always use we in an email.
Yeah.
You always give the illusion that it's bigger than it is. And I think from the outset of me, shooting, maybe not so much nightclubs, but music festivals, and then, developing my craft from there, it was always like, create the allure that there are more people. Yeah,
that we've got a whole team of people. When
whole
it might
team,
be,
whole team. When in reality, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. But it's very much a fake it till you make it sort of thing. And I think,
for sure,
there's no, you learn on the job as well. There's so much that comes from just getting in there and just doing it. And I think you get more opportunities, and it's not necessarily lying. Like,
but you just over confidence.
Yeah, you're still busting it all to make sure that you can, make a product that people are going to be happy with. But I think, there was a massive element of, the fact that I got into nightclubs from just doing, waves.
Beach
and I was
photos,
like, nah, but I can do this. Like, I know I can do this. I think was, we're recording, mate.
We'll cut that out in post, mate. It's all good. Leave it in.
Leave it in.
Yeah.
On the edit room.
I love how I'm the one that's editing. I'm like, leave it in.
Leave it in.
Yeah.
I make
you
the call.
leave it in.
The buck stops with me.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I think somewhat humble beginnings, but I think it's been great for me to, start. I've always loved the Untitled Group family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that group of photographers, and it's great for me to still be able to shoot that stuff today, because I still love shooting music.
Yeah.
But, I think the average age of the punter at BTV was, 20.7, and it was 36,000 people.
That's
and
insane.
I'm sitting there just turning 25, and I'm like, this isn't it.
Like,
I'm so happy for these people who are having an absolute ball and seeing, some of the biggest acts in the world. But, I think I've paid my dues. I've done my stuff. More than happy to shoot that stuff again, and I'm very grateful for those opportunities. But
as a punter, your days are sort of limited.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Onwards and upwards, I think.
Was there sort of like I don't want to say a pinch me moment, but where it's, because I remember, being a bit of a club aficionado would be a nice way to say it. A rat would probably be more accurate, if we would be honest.
Nice way to say it.
Yeah, exactly. But I still remember, you shooting and then us partying in those days. Was there a bit of a sort of like, oh shit moment where you're like, I'm doing these festivals and I'm, front row at Claptone and Lovebirds. And was there sort of like a time where you're like, this is really kicking off? Like, we both were studying business at uni and commerce and stuff. And then was there a time when you're like, okay, this is it? Or was it sort of just a natural progression where like, hey, I can make money from this and I'm good at this and I love it. Let's just sort of keep going and see where the path goes.
I don't think so, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, there are a couple of like funny moments that I was just like, I get to do the wildest shit. Like,
for work.
How do I get paid for this stuff? Like, I remember one occasion, I can't recall what year it was, but I remember, so with certain acts, so the acts are like bigger, so music acts are bigger. There's the bit in front of the stage is the pit, and then there's the stage. Yeah. So some acts will be like, oh, you're allowed in the pit for the first 3 songs, and then that's it. You have to get out. Or there's no one on the stage or no one backstage. So if they're really big, they'll just close the whole thing off. So it's literally just like the artist, production, and their entourage, and that's it. Yeah. So I remember I hadn't really got the memo. It was the year that Stormzy was performing. He was performing at Beyond the Valley a couple of years ago now, a good 3-4 years ago.
Real short guy, you said.
Massive guy. Huge guy.
Yeah.
Absolutely massive. So the way it works there is there's kind of like an artist check-in, and then they get a transfer when it's their time to play, and they get driven down to the stage. And I hadn't realized that it was his time to play. I was just kind of cruising around doing my own thing. And I remember walking through the back, and there was a big, 3 Mercedes vans parked out the back of the stage. And I just happened to walk past as this sliding door was opening, and Stormzy's in there getting a back massage.
Yeah.
Remember looking in and making eye contact and being like, oh, I vaguely remember a message saying that Stormzy was a completely closed set, do not go anywhere near it.
Yeah.
But I was just like, what a legend.
Yeah.
Look at him go.
He's
I barely have
out.
time for a massage now.
Yeah.
I mean, I should prioritize that more. This guy's
this guy's about to
right
perform.
before a job. He's like, you know what? just release the traps.
Look, you do not want to carry
my right
tension.
deltoid's been just playing up, carrying a lot of tension. Can we just release that?
Whenever I rap, I must not have any tension.
No.
That's my number one thing.
No. And those London rappers, I mean, hard.
Oh,
they're hard. But
they're not tense, though.
No.
Hard, but loose.
We grew up on the streets, but at least we have no knots.
Exactly. You do not want to have knots. There's one thing. We may be gangster, but I tell you what.
He comes onto stage, takes off his top, and he's got suction cups. He's just had his the hot stones on his back.
The cubby, and he's so he's smelling essential oils.
Yeah. Is that lavender, Stormzy?
Shit, I didn't expect Stormzy to smell like lavender.
Sandalwood?
That's
nice.
Harbour Roll sandalwood. From that then, I mean, we then obviously, as anyone from Melbourne would know, took music world by storm as our DJ duo, I think we did, how many parties did we do?
Too many.
At one stage? Far too many.
Too many.
To the point where we had a formula for 21st that was literally a folder of 20 songs.
It was a playlist that we just rinsed from start to end, and it just seemed to be the winning formula.
I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I know. It's a very scalable, we could easily just don a mask, do the claptone thing, and just you could take over the whole party scene. Whether that's something that you necessarily want to be doing,
I tell you what,
is besides the point, because there's a lot of time spent sitting around not doing too much, and you get your fair share of ones that you really don't want to be at.
Absolutely. We had some absolute clangers of 21st speeches.
We did, but at the same time, we had some ripper ones.
Oh, definitely.
And it's a really nice kind of intimate DJ environment to be in as well.
Oh, for sure.
And, we met some great people doing it. And that was the lovely thing about it. It was the most fantastic, word of mouth sort of situation
thing where it just
you do one group and then, it just kind of feeds into the rest. And, we were very fortunate to do as many as we did, and it was a lot of fun.
And that was sort of how I got introduced to most of, that sort of Untitled world and stuff after that, doing nightclubs. And you remember that night when, I think for legal reasons, we probably shouldn't name clubs or DJs.
It's quite smart.
We played a set with one famous DJ that's sort of doing the rounds at the moment. Big set at Beyond the Valley, would you say? He did quite a large one. Yeah,
one of the biggest.
His rhymes are pretty dusty. But anyway, we were partying with him in the back room of a club, and I think it was your idea to jump up on the bar and start serving drinks. Now, I know you can market and, do content creation, but this guy is one hell of a bartender, I would say.
To be honest, I realized that recently that I'm actually not that good of a bartender. I had drinks with my business partner and someone else not too long ago, and we were having drinks and they were all delicious. And I was like, they were all making dinner. I was like, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
And she was like, you can make a drink. I was like, yeah. Easy.
Rum and Coke.
She was like, we don't have this and we don't have that. I was like, I'll make something up.
Yeah.
And shocking. So bad. So bad. I don't know what sort of liquid courage was going through us that night that we were playing. But yeah, I vividly remember that. We suddenly found ourselves in a place that maybe we weren't.
I don't even think we were invited into this room.
But
all of
we
a sudden
found ourselves there, and we thought the best way to blend in camouflage style was to jump behind the bar. None of us with RSAs, but just that's probably for legal reasons.
Yeah,
beep
that out. We'll leave it in. But I mean, everyone loved us that night. I thought. It was fine. I mean, by all accounts, we probably shouldn't have, we got gifted. I gave you and you gave me a bottle each to take on our next venture.
And I think that was just payment for the great bartending skills that we exhibited that night.
Absolutely think
Which is a lovely gesture.
Bartending isn't free, and they're the backbone of this nation's economy. So, but it was that sort of a good break for you, though. I mean, obviously you'd seen one side of the industry, being photography and some of the social stuff. But I felt like, when we were doing it, the DJing was almost sort of like a good break or holiday within the sort of same industry.
Yeah, it definitely was. And I mean, for me, it was just a massive convenience because I could jump up and, do a little, we could do like a little opening set and then we could do that and, have a couple of beers, and then I could just pick up the camera and then, go wild and do my actual job, which was just to roam around the club for, an hour and a half and shoot all the people and creatures that were in there.
You absolutely have to specify the creatures.
The creatures, because they are...
Yeah. There's
a subsection.
Oh, for sure. We've met a few.
Yeah.
I think we've all been there.
We've all been there.
Absolutely. But yeah, and then so from moving into that, the transition for you into like sort of the more graphic design and content creation stuff and socials. Do you want to talk us through that? Because you've had quite a long journey to get to the point you are now. Talk us through how that journey sort of started. Was that a calculated thing by you, or was it sort of like, this is...
most of it was trying to find a way to use my uni degree as much as I could.
So what did you study, just for audience at home?
So studied commerce and psychology.
Yeah.
Very different to what I do these days. I majored Just a touch. Majored in business analytics, which is very finance, mathsy based, which is just not what I'm doing now.
I mean, I failed the unit the first time I did it, so I feel your pain, mate. It's a lot.
Yeah. We need to make sure we don't take a sip at the same time.
Yeah, fuck.
There's just like a
dead air.
There's just like people waiting. All right, enjoy that sip.
Enjoy the
fun.
sip, you fucks.
People are driving along and they're just like, all right.
What would the listeners at home think?
Well, they'd think, why can't I have a beer now as well? These guys are enjoying a beer. Why can't I enjoy a beer as well?
Sucks to suck.
It does. At the end of the day, it's funny though, as this podcast goes, and it's great. It's almost like it's the difference between like the Jimmy Fallons of the US and then the Graham Nortons of the UK, where they're just allowed to just have as many drinks as possible before. You end up getting such better content.
Way better content, mate.
Have a couple of drinks before.
It's the social lubricant, mate. That's what it's all about.
It is. And just as you have a couple, we had a couple before we started recording and just talking about what we were going to, just off air.
Yeah.
And then it makes it so much easier.
Absolutely. And we can talk for hours on the phone as we do most days.
Exactly.
But chuck a microphone and a camera in front of you, it gets a bit different.
It's a little bit different, but it's not disconcerting. It's fine.
No, it's good.
I'm happy about it.
Absolutely. But continue with the story. Apologies for the dead air, everyone.
Dead air.
I mean, if you're watching at home, you fucking loved it. So let's continue.
That's true.
Absolutely.
So look, I think it was something that always interested me. I was building websites from a younger age, and I was, I always had an interest in marketing, and I felt that I needed some sort of industry experience to quantify or just make sure I had something under the belt before I went into, running an agency for myself.
So was that running your own thing? That was always sort of the central goal?
Yeah, it was always the central goal. I mean, I in reality, I never had a real job, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, I was always, shooting for myself, and that involved, invoicing for myself, doing my tax return for myself. All that sort of stuff was part of it. But I suppose I felt that I needed to see how a larger agency ran.
Yeah, okay, for sure.
In addition to, get some exposure to some bigger clients. I mentioned before, I've found a lot of value through faking it until you make it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that only goes so far to a certain extent. I did need, we were able to, work with some big clients doing just photo and video, and that was fine. But I feel like, it's an extra step to be able to do, a strategy for someone or, manage their socials.
And so did you always sort of have those like when you're talking about learning how to do that sort of business strategy and campaign strategy in terms of marketing, is that something that you read about, or is it something that you saw or always innately kind of looked in that, if I was doing that campaign, I'd do it better? What was the development process like for that? Because, I know for when I've run my businesses and stuff, through latency events and other, ventures outside of the public eye, you've always been the first person I call, like, what do you think of this strategy? And we've sort of always gone back and forth. I think we've both
it out,
both sort of said, you keep throwing darts at the dartboard, eventually you're going to hit a bullseye kind of thing. Like
100%. I think there's a lot of, one of the best books I've read was The Lean Startup, which puts a lot of emphasis on minimum viable product, just getting something out there.
Sure.
And I really resonated with that idea, but I also felt that I needed some sort of real world experience that was outside the content realm, that was something that was a little bit more strategic and a little bit more, in a real business.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I was fortunate enough to be asked by someone who was at ID Collective, which is based in, I think it's Sydney and Melbourne, which is a PR digi outfit that's still running today and still doing great things. But that was a really great stepping stone for me. I spent about 2 years there. The main learnings, there are a couple of learnings from that. One was, how does a larger scale agency work? What's involved in people tracking time, what are billable hours, what the profitability of a certain account. I think that was...
And learning how to do that in a dynamic environment as well, with so many different kinds of clients.
For sure. And I think in addition to that, getting to work on, they had massive names like Mondelez, who own, Cadbury and Adidas and Champion and some really kind of household name brands.
Absolutely.
That I was able to gain exposure to as well. And, by the end of it, was able to run a lot of it, self-sufficiently as well. That was a really good experience for me.
Yeah.
So I think it allowed me to develop some skills through that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to develop. And if I'd gone straight into, right now with Northbrook, we've made a bit of a transition to pushing more into the digital and social realm.
Yeah.
I think if I hadn't have had that, really hard experience of running those accounts in a bigger agency with multiple stakeholders and, higher paying clients, that I wouldn't have been able to help this get off the ground as quickly and easily as we have.
Absolutely. And I think that you raised a really good point there as well, that, I remember when you were working at ID, and I think a lot of people sort of look to the social marketing realm as sort of like, oh, this will be such a sick lifestyle and, it'll be so cruisy and I get to do all this cool shit, which you do. But the hours you were working there, like if a client calls you at 7 o'clock on a Friday and you need to get these, things edited for a campaign, you're on the fucking clock. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I think do you think that's probably a misconception? At least what I see from the outside looking in, that seems to be a massive misconception among a lot of people, that it's like, oh, you work in social media or you work in marketing, must be so cruisy. But that's not really the reality.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the market at the moment for social media agencies, the bar's definitely raised in recent years, because I think a lot of clients are more in tune to metrics that matter. And I think in the past there were people who could, sign $5,000-$10,000 a month retainers and kind of cruise by without too much oversight from their clients.
And now, so when you're talking about those metrics, what are you sort of talking about? Is it sort of engagement stuff, or what are sort of the metrics that you look at, without getting too technical, obviously?
I mean, it really depends. I mean, so for us at the moment, when we sign a client, there's kind of an ongoing conversation of, okay, what are the goals?
Yeah.
And there are a couple of reasons we set those goals from the outset with the client. One is to, keep us accountable.
Yeah.
Two is to make sure that we're actually providing the value that the client wants as well. We can set KPIs for follower growth if that's something that's important to them, or engagement if that's something that's important to them.
Yeah.
I think an interesting thing or development that we've seen in recent years is the rise of the more minimalist influencer in terms of just iPhone content.
So are you talking minimalist in terms of their approach to content creation, or what's sort of the definition of that?
More so, I feel like consumers these days are a little bit more in tune to what is a paid campaign. What's, as soon as it's, let's take TikTok, for example. As soon as, there's more premium looking content, for example, shot on an SLR as opposed to an iPhone, I feel like there's an element of...
Or shot on a Sony ZV-E10. Sony.
Shout out.
Sponsor us. Anyway,
shout out. I would love that, personally. I'm a big fan of the
absolutely.
Series and the FX6. Great camera. Great camera. But I think there's an element of, consumers' brains kind of switching off as soon as they see something that's of a higher production value, because they're like, well, this is obviously an ad.
Yeah.
Because they put money into it.
For sure.
And whether or not that's it's definitely not a conscious, conversation that goes on in someone's head. But I think, that was something that we realized quite quickly. So, from digital clients, we need to strike a balance, and we call them content pillars, and ensuring that there's an adequate spread of, iPhone and original content in addition to premium content. I think there's value in the premium content, even though, we call them vanity metrics, the likes and the comments, even though they might not be as high on the premium content, it's still quite important to have, especially as it relates to our clients who are naturally of a more premium nature. You still need to evoke the personality that it is a premium brand, and therefore you need to have those, more sleek looking content on the feed, whether or not they achieve, the same, likes and comments as an iPhone post would garner.
It almost would seem that, like, when you're going back to sort of the iPhone original stuff, it's like, yes, we're a premium brand, but it's kind of like for a new business, they're like, oh, we're going to spend this money to shoot a premium video to say, like, this is how we can be a high-end product. Whereas for a high-end product that everyone knows, you almost have to do the reverse of being like, hey, we're still like a relatable brand that shoots on an iPhone.
Yeah.
It's sort of that inverse of where a business is at?
I think it's a bit of both. I think one of the main things is, for a consumer looking, you're always kind of looking, okay, if a consumer is looking at this post, what are they feeling? And from the data that we've seen based on those vanity metrics and how well those posts perform, the iPhone stuff allows people an easier way to relate to the content, because they feel that that's something that they could have posted themselves. And there's a really funny, almost, it seems kind of counterintuitive, but right now we're working quite closely with Untitled Group, producing all of their TikTok content. And there's a really funny, counterintuitive kind of thing to it at the moment, where the less produced videos seem to perform better.
So if it's sort of more of like a grassroots video, I guess you could say, where it's like someone shooting on like an iPhone, the same thing shot on 4 different SLRs is not going to perform nearly as well.
No, it's not. And I think that comes back to, how relatable is the content. In addition to, it's an interesting thing to look at, because you kind of, with these clients, you're kind of trying to strike the balance of, okay, we are a premium brand, we want to be putting this foot forward, but in addition, we want to be engaging everyone to a certain extent, so we need the iPhone content to at least be a part of it. And especially on platforms like TikTok or Instagram Reels, the iPhone content's performing really well, which, to be honest, is great for us, because it's quite easy
point and shoot sort of thing,
to pull together. But there are also nuances that come with that as well.
And so has TikTok sort of brought about a new age in terms of the way things are marketed? It seems like right now the step for sort of social stuff, if you will, is amass a TikTok following, then trying to, port, say you got 1 million TikTok followers on TikTok rather, port that over to Instagram, and then port that into sales, is sort of the way that it seems
definitely.
like.
I mean, I feel like, you go viral on TikTok's a fantastic platform for people to be discovered quite easily, because it's almost like a completely even playing field. Instagram gives a little bit more weight to the people you follow. Those are the reels that you'll see. In addition to, the algorithm isn't quite as in tune as I feel like it is on TikTok. So, for a brand to make a couple of viral TikToks and, gain a heap of traffic to their website, it's a very quick, easy, cost-effective way, because in reality, these people aren't spending too much money on TikTok ads. They're just literally throwing darts at the dartboard and trying to make one go viral. And if it does, you're amassing a worldwide audience. And,
so do you not really see that on Instagram? It's more localized in terms of the way that it gets shown?
I think it is more localized, but I think the chances of someone going viral on TikTok are much higher than they are Instagram. In addition to, the spread demographically of people that they're able to reach through TikTok
Is
is
way-
much
way larger.
greater and,
Yeah.
and wider.
For sure.
And, there's somewhat of a misconception about the audience of TikTok as well, that it's quite young. And
I think it maybe that used to be the case when TikTok was sort of this like, it's the new what was the app? The Vine. It was the new Vine.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think they've sort of done it in a way which lends itself far more to monetization, that you can sort of get that far greater audience specifically to your own kind of interests. Like the algorithm, I feel like, is quite tailored.
The algos are crazy.
Yeah.
They're so crazy. And I think the ability and the chance to go viral on TikTok is much easier than it is Instagram. And I think, we're living in the age, and we have for so long, of, Instagram bots and, fake followers. It was very easy for people to amass, 100, 200,000 followers just by paying, $300.
Do you want to talk about your coding days of that bot that you might have coded back in the day?
I may have had
a bot
back
in the day.
A little Python bot.
That might have...
introduction to Python, thanks to Monash University.
And look, I may have all of a sudden amassed 10 or 11,000 followers, and then within a week lost them all. But
I mean, the good thing about... we don't have to get into the bot and what it did, because I'm pretty sure it wouldn't work anymore, because they've kind of patched those holes. But the way that amassed followers was purely the follow me back because I followed you and I've got cool content. That was basically how that bot ran, and it just ran through. We don't have to go into this. I feel like
getting into the weeds a little bit.
Yeah, breaking down a Python
Tell
code
me the
isn't
exact
that interesting.
Python code right now.
Yeah. Input.
Ones and zero. If you think about it, life is ones and zeros.
It is.
But so where do you sort of see... I mean, we've got a bit off track, but so you went from ID and then you've launched Northbrook. Now, Northbrook is working with some of the biggest clients, world-renowned clients, as well as the biggest clients in Australia. What was that process like, going from, you're an employee, as you said? Was there a moment when you were an employee at ID when you said, okay, I've got enough? I think a lot of people these days are almost paralysis by analysis, I think. And I'm true of this as well, where you're like, oh, but what if this doesn't work and I've got to learn more about this? Was it a case of, okay, I've got the knowledge, I think I know what I need to, and I'm going to find out the rest, time to pull the trigger? Or how calculated was that decision? And run me through what that was like.
I think, look, it was quite a few things. I think Eugene, my business partner, and I were quite lucky in the fact that...
Shout out, Eugene.
Shout out. We were quite lucky in the fact that we'd kind of run our own things independently for a little while.
Yeah.
So we kind of knew how a very small scale business was to run. And then, from the insight that the agency, ID Collective, had provided us as well, we had a little bit more information as well to how to start an agency.
Okay. Yep.
In terms of was there a moment where I said, let's do this? No, not necessarily. I think it was towards the end of COVID.
Yeah.
I think I was getting a little bit tired of just the work I was doing. I felt I wasn't providing as much value as I originally was.
Yeah.
And I think I needed something. I always knew I wanted to work for myself. That's always been a thing.
Yeah.
And I felt like I'd kind of sucked all the bits of value out of that company that I could have. And it was a fantastic company.
Yeah.
A really, really great company.
Absolutely.
And it has taught me so much of what I know today and continue to implement within my own business as well.
For sure.
In terms of was there a moment where I was like, oh shit, all right, let's go? I think I just decided one day, that's it. I think I'd been toying with it, and I had an email drafted to say, time to go. There was a moment where I just said, look, this is it. It's time to go. Sent the email, 2 weeks.
Yep.
See you later.
Yeah, so it was just there was time for you to move on. I think I think there's a good case in point that you do you want to put this been bothering me the whole fucking podcast? Can you put the XLR cable back into its mount at the top of the little thing? So I'll continue my rant now.
Yep.
I really think there's a strong sort of case in point there where, and I'm guilty of this myself, where people sort of want to jump to, I work for myself. I want to do it all. But you did that period where, you realized that you had experience to gain. And I think, whilst the goal, I think everyone's goal, my goal by starting this podcast is to have something that is my own and work for myself and, take on the responsibilities that is, but ultimately have the freedom to decide what responsibilities those are. But I think the experience of, doing that and then getting to a point where you're burnt out, I've recently finished up at a full-time role where I had the same thing. I think that's a really, really valuable one. I think in this, you got to hustle and fuck the system and blah, blah, blah culture that we're living in. That's really undervalued. I think you've got a lot of time, particularly, when you're in your 20s or when you just finished school.
20s to
learn.
30s is the time where you just, you try shit.
And now we're getting closer to 30. 30 is young, everyone. 30's young.
Yeah.
And even 40 might be young also.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's the time, because look, if you fail and you stuff up, you need to fail. If you haven't failed, then you haven't been trying hard enough.
For sure.
I definitely believe that. That's, especially after the crypto crash, I definitely believe that.
How good's Luna, brother?
But you can.
Let's
Are we going down the crypto? I didn't know crypto was on the on the cards
on the sheet of conversation.
It wasn't on
Can you
the
tell us a
sheet.
lot about Luna and how it's the best crypto to invest in?
Look, at the time, it was a great cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is necessarily what we want to go down. I think the learning from it is take the wins as you go.
You take your W's and you take your L's.
And look, I was happy with the W's that I took along the way. They might not have been sufficient.
Yep.
But, you live and you learn. Big old bubble that was.
Oh, bit of a bubble. But, you know what they say about bubbles.
Sometimes they pop.
You can always blow another one. Anyway.
Is that what they say? I didn't realise that's what they said.
I mean, they might say it.
They might say that now.
Exactly. I mean, now that I've put it out on the interwebs.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
Now it's going to happen.
Absolutely. But yeah, no. So you got that experience. You've started Northbrook. Now, started with another good friend of ours, Eugene. And walk us through that. So you've started Northbrook. What was the approach, from a perspective of, did you, moving forward, how do you get clients as someone that's quite young? I would imagine approaching these people, even with the acumen of work that you've got, you approach, a multinational organization or a large-scale business saying, look, I want to run all your shit. It's a daunting proposition. How do you sort of, how did you go about learning that? And obviously ID is a big part of that too.
Yeah.
But talk us through that process.
Yeah, look, I think ID was a big part of that, because one of my not so much my big roles, but I was part of pulling together a lot of propositions for new business. That was, one of the KPIs that I was held accountable for while I was there. But we were quite fortunate in the fact that we had worked quite extensively within that industry before. So we had a bank of clients that we were able to very quickly sign on, not necessarily pulling them from ID, but we had, external clients as well. Yuge and I had worked with, MTV before, and we'd worked with, heaps of pubs before and restaurants and smaller scale businesses. So I think that kind of transition was easier for us than it might be for other businesses.
Yeah.
Because we had those connections already.
For sure.
And as a result of that, it meant that we didn't necessarily have to put in as much capital to start the business as well, because we could just start on basically doing what we were already doing, but with just a name to us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think in terms of, there was a lot of hard work. I mean, we were working out of my parents' spare room for the start of it. We just got 2 desks and, we spent...
You know who did that? Steve Jobs.
Did he?
So
I don't think I can quite compare myself
Northbrook,
to
invest
the great
in
man.
Northbrook, kids, because that's going to go up and up. Anyway.
I'll let you know when we go public.
Absolutely. I'm signing on for that Steve Madden IPO right there. That's
Madden.
Steve. Anyway, continue.
It's a nice reference there.
A good little reference. Shout out Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, that's right. I was trying to work out where that was from. So, no, look, I think the transition was it was hard at the start because we were like, okay, are we actually onto something here or are we not?
Yeah.
Because in reality, what we were doing was just packaging up, you know, what we already did to a certain extent, which was just creating content for people and then just putting an agency name behind it. But in reality, the reception that we got was that, you know, as soon as you have the name behind it, and like I said before, you know, you add the we to emails, it gives the allure that you've got a team behind you as well.
Yeah.
And we saw some great growth from there as well.
Unreal.
And the ability to sign bigger and bigger clients as we go. And look, there are some really key individuals that helped us, you know, connections that we had garnered across the way. A big, you know, kind of shout out to Elliot Garnow as well, who was instrumental in introducing us to some of the bigger names
in the fashion world.
In the fashion world. Love that man.
Yep. I've never met him, but I'm still waiting on my stylist appointment.
Look, great man who was able to introduce us to some really incredible brands and people who we still work with today. In addition to Christian as well, Christian Rocky, owner of Bondi Protein Co., who's a partner in the business as well, who has been able to, you know, just introduce us to some fantastic people in addition to just giving, you know, some great advice over the years as well.
Yeah.
So look, it's definitely not something that we've done just off our own backs. We've had, you know, some really great connections that we've garnered across the years as well. But I think there's a lot to be said for, you know, going into every job, assuming that they're going to, you know, recommend you to other people and going above and beyond. And, you know, I've always said to the team, you know, it's so important to be not so much as nice as possible, because I feel like that's just the baseline.
I mean, that's how you should
that's your baseline. Yeah. But I think, you know, if you go above and beyond and you make, you know, everyone you would hope loves their job. But if you're on a job with someone and you make their life just that little bit easier or that little bit more fun, then they're going to go home feeling great.
Yeah. Well, I had a boss recently, you know, in the last job that I was doing full time. And one thing, you know, it speaks to this as well. He said, it's not the big things that we do. It's the TNTs. It's the tiny, noticeable things
100%.
that'll set you apart from the competition. It's
100%.
You know, doing those little things that most people are like, oh, it doesn't matter. It'll be right. But if you pay attention to those whilst also doing the big things well, then all of a sudden, you know, a good experience becomes a fantastic experience. And it doesn't take a huge amount of effort. It's just paying attention to those little details.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the 1%ers that matter, but I think there's also an element of, and look, this is different for our business compared to other businesses, because, you know, we're providing a service, but then there's a bit of a lull and then someone's getting their assets or whatever it is later on down the track. But I think there's an element of, if you make someone feel really good through that full day shoot that they've paid for and they're having a really great time on it and the talent's fantastic and everything's going really well, then they're predisposed to, you know, when they receive that email from you with the assets in it, they're so happy.
Yeah.
The flip side of
this
that,
has been great. Like
100%. The flip side of that is they've had an awful experience, and even if the assets are bangers and they're incredible, they're predisposed just to be like, well, this is going to be bad. So look, even if, you know, and look, we try to do the best we can.
It comes down to no one likes to work with a prick.
No, 100%.
It's just so easy to be a nice person and enjoy and just say to g'day and have fun with people from every walk of life and be as pleasant as you possibly can, even when people haven't been so pleasant to you. If you maintain that sort of, okay, well, that's on you, you know, I think it pays dividends in the end.
100%. I think there's also just the little bits of just working out the clients that you're working with, what makes them tick, what'll make them really happy with the service I'm providing now. It's something that my dad said to me ages ago. He was like, you know, what is the absolute golden rule of dealing with people in business? And I was like, oh, well, it's got to be, you know, the biblical one. It's got to be treat people as you would like to be treated. And he was like, no, that's the silver rule. The golden rule is you're treating people the way they want to be treated.
Yeah.
And I was like, that makes so much sense. You're tailoring the experience based on the client. If you've got a client who's super stressed. You know, the full day shoot investment that they're making in Northbrook, or, you know, the full day investment they're making in your company is a big deal for them because that's their hard-earned money.
Absolutely. And this might be a massive punt. You know, we're saying, okay,
Yeah.
we're going to get Northbrook on and we're going to spend most of our budget on this. Like, fingers crossed, praying that it works.
Yeah, and look, we don't take that lightly at all, and we try to make each experience. You know, obviously, we try to make the assets as good as possible. You know,
of course, that's part and parcel.
Yeah. But I think that the other thing is just making their experience as good as possible, then the client's as happy as possible. It's just being a nice person. Like, you know, it's
just being a good dude.
It sounds cliche and it sounds a bit lame, but I think it's true.
I completely agree. And so from that, so you and Eugene have started this thing, and you've pulled in these amazing clients. You know, I won't mention names, but some of the biggest brands in the world, really. And, you know, the fashion people and food and beverage and luxury items, everything. Mm. And so then when did you make the decision, okay, this is more than we are, just us two can sort of handle, plus Christian? You know, you brought him on a bit after, I think, when you started, or was he original? Or?
No, he was from the start. Christian was just a really great mentor from the start, like a really fantastic mentor. He's a
great dude.
Guy.
We've got good friends, but
great guy. He's a fantastic business mind. He's been someone I can always call and ask for help.
Yeah,
you know, run ideas past. He's fantastic. In terms of when did it
get to the point where you needed more staff, and how did you approach that? Because, I mean, I'd imagine, you know, you've got this thing that's sort of like your baby, and then it's like, okay, maybe we need to branch out. What was that process like of, okay, we need to hire people, I'm going to be a boss, you know?
Yeah, super daunting. I think, like, the other challenge is being young doing it as well. You know, the people that we're hiring are, you know, I'm the second youngest in the company. You know, it's one of, you know, of 9 employees. It's a hard thing to not necessarily assert authority. I think that comes into it, but, you know, it's a bit of a challenging thing.
Yeah.
In reality, from the content side, last year we did 388 content jobs in a year.
Yeah.
So it's physically impossible for Eugene and I to be shooting that much and editing that much.
Just simply become an octopus.
That's what I might have to do.
I think
they're
working on it right now for us.
Then I realized I couldn't become an octopus, so we needed to hire more people.
Absolutely. So how did you go about that, right? Was it, you know, you're looking for, I think you've obviously have the network in the field, right? So do you sort of look to the people that you've worked with before, or how does that?
Yeah, we looked at the people we worked with before. So Josh, the first person we properly employed.
Shout out Josh.
Shout out to Josh, Joshy Bainbridge, Josh B from the 3193.
Josh B from the 313.
3193. I think he
314.
He wants to change that handle. So Josh Bainbridge.
Josh Bainbridge. What a man.
We'll just go with that. An incredible human who was just more than happy to jump on the journey with us and helped us a lot from just putting out the quality of work that we wanted to put out with this sheer volume that we were getting.
Yeah.
You know, 388 shoots last year is ludicrous.
Insane. Yeah.
And
so did that go from like how, like we're talking first year, how quickly did it get to that point?
I mean, you know, from the first year to the second year, we over doubled the revenue with just Huge and I.
Yeah.
And then we brought on more people, and then it expanded from there as well.
And I would imagine that's sort of what we were talking about before, you know, doing the little things and then also the quality of the work. You didn't really put much advertising out there, did you, at all?
No.
It was just
look,
word of
we
mouth.
won. Well, I think we ran maybe $600 worth of ads and got a couple of leads from that. But we were more than happy with just work. You know, based on the quality of our work and Melbourne being a small place, we were more than happy with the leads that we were getting from there.
And would you say that's sort of a strategy that you think people should sort of look to in rather than saying, "Hey, I've got this product, let me dump 10 grand into sponsored ads"? Maybe let it speak for itself.
I think it's different because, like, I mean, we're kind of like, you know, we're only B2B as a business.
Yeah.
So, you know, the the kind of word of mouth referral was something that worked really well for us in terms of like a D2C brand.
Yeah.
Definitely not. And look, as we grow and we have the capability to take on more work, then, advertising is something that we'll, definitely look into in the future. But, we started doing it and we got a couple of leads and we were like, well, look, we're at capacity now. So there's no point putting out, putting
out ads to get more leads when you can't actually
more
service
spend when we can't service it. And, one of the big things with Northbrook is, producing a quality product.
Yeah.
And if we're not able to uphold that, then it's just not worth saying yes to the lead.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, look, scaling involved a couple of things. I think one was, we need to grow more avenues of the business. Every kind of book I had read said don't diversify too quickly, and we realized that very early on that diversifying too fast was the wrong way to go. We had digital clients at the start that didn't have the happiest of endings because we just we committed to the world and we weren't able to fulfill that when the content side was booming so hard. So we made the business decision to scale back on the stuff that wasn't content and primarily focus on the content side of the business.
Absolutely.
Which is what we did for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then from there we then looked to, hey, look, content is kind of it's part of digital, it's part of social. It makes sense for them to be sold as a package because one of the main
they're two sides of the same coin, sort of thing.
100%. Yeah. I think we found that there was an element of multiple agencies dealing with one client, and there was a lack of communication and a lack of awareness between the agencies for what the goal was for any specific client.
Yeah.
So we thought, let's bridge that gap. Yeah. If we manage the content, we manage the digital, we know the strategy, we can use our content team to capture the content that we know that will convert because we know the metrics because it's all in-house.
Yeah.
So that was what we realized really early on.
And that seems quite unique compared to like a lot of other agencies seem to be either content focused or digi focused.
Yeah.
And we're bringing it all under one thing definitely. And having different members under the same roof.
Oh, definitely. There are heaps of, Melbourne, Sydney now, there are heaps of just purely marketing agencies that are doing fantastic work with e-commerce brands.
Yeah.
Because in reality, you don't have to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
That massively. But for the more experiential and some of the other product brands, you do need to kind of bridge the gap between the content and the marketing a little bit more.
Yeah.
So we saw that gap and we thought, let's jump onto it. So that's where the scaling came into it as well. And
for sure.
Off the back of, myself having experience in digital marketing as well for some reasonably sized brands as well.
Yeah.
It just made sense to scale in that direction. So
absolutely.
We hired a producer to help on the content side, just to help with the direction and the quality of the content that we were putting out, especially for the larger ticket item products that we were selling.
Yep.
In addition to someone on the digital side to help develop and foster the leads that we had already on the content side. And we kind of said, hey, do you need help in this department as well? Because we feel that we offer it. And if we feel that we bring it all under one roof, that ultimately the results will be better for you. And that's kind of...
And I think you've seen those results as well with the campaigns that you're running.
Oh,
and
definitely.
The return clients and okay, you've done this campaign, let's jump up to a bigger campaign now.
Well, it's also, I think it's also like shortening the feedback loop as well. We can now produce a campaign. Excuse me, too many beers.
Yeah, dead air, mate, dead air.
We can produce a campaign and immediately see the results from that campaign. And from that data, we can then iterate and then provide a better service next time for that same client. So it's just shortening that feedback loop. And in addition, all the data is now available to us as opposed to before where it's kind of
half the picture kind of thing.
And, every digital marketing agency is the same. You're inflating your metrics. You're trying to put your best foot forward, which I get. Like it makes sense. But we're now
digital marketing agencies. You watch out. Tell you what, you got to be.
But it makes sense. Reporting. You're always trying to put your best foot forward.
Definitely.
And for us, if we know exactly what is happening with every single campaign and what consumers are, resonating with, then we can make those changes internally. We can suggest those changes to the client, then we can make those changes for the next campaign that we do, and it just leads into the overall digital strategy.
And I would imagine that even a year, 2 years ago, if you had have suggested, hey, the content that's actually performing the best, no matter what size brand you are, is the iPhone shot, single shot content in a digital marketing agency, they're like, well, that's not what we do. Like, we're going to produce it. We're going to, I think taking that dynamic approach and responding to marketing conditions by being on both sides of the table, you can really do that. Like, you can interpret each side of the market, quite well, the brand's wants and the consumers, what the consumers engage with the most.
For sure.
And then create that in a way more effective way than if you were just doing one or the other.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said before, shortening the feedback loop, also ensuring that we have all the information available to us as well to be able to make those data-driven decisions as well.
Yeah. And so data is king, obviously, in terms of where you want to be at. Or is it, do you think, on an artistic level, because you're a creative, is there something to be said for that as well?
Yeah, there definitely is. I think a really good example of that recently is, the Belvedere Daniel Craig commercial that's gone live recently, which is fantastic. But, obviously they've paid a shitload of money to get Daniel Craig dancing like that in the commercial. But I think there's
you
something
mean to tell me he doesn't do that for free?
I thought he did. I thought he did it for contract.
He goes skydiving with the Queen for free. So, tell you what, R.I.P. Lizzie. Shout out Lizzie.
Yeah, shout out to Lizzie. How's she going?
Oh, that's a bit awkward.
Oh,
cut
dead
that.
air.
But yeah, no, but
it's funny that some of the dead air things are actually going to make it in.
They're definitely going to make it in. We're keeping all of this in.
Yeah, all of it. So, yeah, look, hell of a ride. I think at the moment with the business, it's an interesting time to have the conversation now, because I would assume, this podcast is obviously going to do well. It's going to do its thing. And
look, Joe Rogan better watch out. That's all I'm saying. Joe, I'm looking at you now.
Big Joey.
You better watch the fuck out. I'm bald as well.
Big Joey.
I have tattoos. I'm not as jacked as you, but
that's fine. That's fine. Heyman Andy. I'm not sure if it's quite on the same.
Yeah, well, they better watch out as well. Pretty funny.
Caliber.
Pretty funny.
They are pretty funny.
Hamish and Andy, Ben and Alex, sort of works.
It does. It does.
But yeah, mate. So tell me about the future. What's plans in the next 6 to 12 months? Obviously, you've just had a beautiful baby girl, Audrey, who I'm an unofficial godfather of, obviously. But tell me, fatherhood.
I'll tell you what. The Godfather conversation was challenging, and it's something that we haven't quite reached a result on. I'm not sure if we will, because the competition for it is so fierce. But for me, I'm happy she's so loved by all of my friends, which is to be honest all I could ask for.
Definitely.
No, she's been a real blessing. It's been something for me that has pulled my life into perspective a little bit more.
For sure.
And now, Claire, my partner, and I, we're no longer just working for ourselves. We're working for each other, in addition to this child that we've just brought into the world as well. So I think that the main change that's happened for me is, now every business decision, every personal decision, I'm taking that into account as well.
Everything. Yeah.
100%. So, look, next year for me, this is a good way to keep me accountable, because it's
live on the air, absolutely.
It's a recording of my...
and just because I'm your best mate, don't think I'm going to edit this shit out.
No, that's true. I need to put my resolutions down in 320 kilobit audio format.
Audio form, and then 4K, and then 1080 video form as well.
We can get into all the dimensions.
Absolutely.
That's one of my
the dimensions are
things.
happening.
They're always written on the whiteboard in the office.
If there's anything that we love, it's dimensions.
I love it. Dimensions and cable management.
Oh, cable management. I'll tell you what, have you looked at the cable management behind there, mate? It's quite a tasty little selection of cable management.
It's not bad.
It's a bit of a hodgepodge with the cable management. This guy, when we used to DJ, for those at home, I'm quite a fast and loose, to coin a term from another podcast that shan't be named. I'm quite a fast
That
and
wasn't
loose.
named before.
That was definitely it. From Hamish and Andy. I'm more of a Hamish and he's more of an Andy. And we would go out, DJ these parties, and I would, be going and having a drink and talking to people, and I'd come back and he'd be packing up, and every cable had its own little zip tie. It'd be placed very neatly into a box, and then when it was my turn to pack down the equipment, it'd be all in knots and shoved in because I don't have time. Who's got time to sort out cables? No one. Anyway.
It's an investment in your future, though, isn't it?
That's future use problem, mate.
You want the future Alex to find those cables again and realize, thank you for doing that.
Future Alex can
The people at work give me such a hard time for my cable management because even when I'm stressed, I just came from Beyond the Valley. Yeah. I wasn't even stressed. I was just like walking around this media room.
Just managing cables.
I was like,
I
was sitting at a good friend of mine, Alex's desk, because we had trestle table desks in this little media room. I was only there for a couple of days, but I just kind of assumed her position, was on the computer doing my thing, and realized that her cable was kind of, all messy. Yep. And I was like, it can't be like that. And then
you're sick in the head.
Grabbed it, and then perfect. Sometimes I can't control everything in life, but if I can control my cables, then I'm a happy man.
Mate, I think that's a perfect way to end it. If a man can control a cable, he can be a happy man. Benjamin Jones, it's been an absolute pleasure. I love you very, very much.
No, I love you too.
Thank you for being on the pod.
No, thank you very much for letting me be the first one as well. I feel like this is it's a historic moment. So I wish the podcast the best.
Yeah, mate. No, it's I think it's going to be a really fun project, and tell the people at home where they can find you. So it's at Northbrook on Instagram.
Yeah,
at Northbrook Agency
on Instagram, and at Ben Jones Photography on Instagram.
Alrighty, and northbrook.com.au if you want to book any sort of social content, photography, any sort of consultation. These guys can sort you out.
It's all right there.
Till next time, thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate it a lot. Let's go drink some beers.
Cheers, brother. Thanks so much. Let's go!